Hi, I'm John Deary, and welcome to this edition of our podcast, which is the Union Leadership Benefiting Members. And we are just so delighted to have one of the most important union leaders in the country as our guest today. And that is my personal friend, Jim Slevin, who is the national president of the Utility Workers of America. And Jim, welcome, and we're so delighted you're here.
John, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure being in with you and having a conversation. I find it delightful, and I also find it inspiring too. Friendship and what we do in our worlds too.
Well, let's talk about your utility workers, because it is a kind of a union that so many people relate to. But basically, your dad was a utility worker, as I understand, and an accident and an incident that he had brought you to some extent into the union, and ultimately with particular focus on safety. So I'd be very, very anxious to start there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So my dad, I'm a second generation utility worker. And my dad came here as a young adult from Ireland with not probably much education, and became a utility worker and worked for years in the utilities in New York. During his tenure there, I remember being a young kid in the Bronx and going to the dresser and seeing coins on there, but also seeing letters that his bosses had told him, John Slevin did this, John Slevin did that, and how good of a worker he was. But I remember when we lived on Walton Avenue in the Bronx, he had called up and he had said, I'm going to work a little overtime today. And in that experience of working overtime, he wanted to save so he could go back to Ireland and see my grandparents, and a big family, understanding that, the bondness of it. The next phone call we received as as myself and my family was that he had got injured, and we rushed to the hospital. My world had changed. My family and my siblings' world and my mom's world had changed at that time. He had fallen, and he had crushed his hip, where he had pins and plates put into his hip. He also then went into a spiral world of depression, lost his mom at that time, became a bad alcoholic. And his world had changed, and also his world and his environment at work had changed. They had blamed him for his accident and his injury. And it really kind of inspired where I am today, because of the fact that I feel no worker should be thrown like a rag. Mm-hmm. And I believe that in the sides of my family has always given me dignity and respect, and people should be treated that way. So my ambitions has always been to care for my membership, but also to care that even their families are respected in that side of it, and making sure that all workers come to work and go home the same way they are. And that's always been my ambitions.
In your role as the leader of the utility workers in the United States of America is pretty remarkable. So let's talk about the number of members that you in fact represent.
Yeah, so right now we're in a fluctuation. We're a little over 45,000. We were higher, but the atmosphere of closing coal plants and the changes in the utility industry has really made some impact changes to us and membership-wise. But we represent members from those in the line side of electric and distribution and transmission, to the same areas in natural gas, to coal plants, to tree trimmers, to engineers, to water facilities, to treatment plants, to wastewater treatment plants. So we're a wide spectrum across the United States. In not every state, but majority of states. And our membership is really a vital piece to it, to making sure there's economic growth in the community, to making sure there's the essential needs. And I'll tell you, I've seen that probably more than ever during what I saw them standing up to the plate when COVID had happened, and what they did.
You talk about unions. I'm very interested in your perspective as a major leader in the union industry, so to speak. What do you think about the union activities, and how is the strength of the unions generally? Because we have so many members that we now represent that were union members in various fields. So I'm interested what your perspective about unionism generally is now.
Yeah, John, it's changing, and it has to change. We can't be the unions of the 60s, and we can't be the unions of the 80s. People are changing, Communities are changing, the industries are changing, the demands and needs are changing. From the contract table, just even to the affordability issues that are going on today. So we're seeing those things happen. Sometimes we're lagging behind and sometimes we're out forward. AI is on the forefront of it all, and we're seeing that more than ever before. And we're really engaged in it and seeing how it could really benefit to make sure that workers are taken care of, to make sure they're safe, and making sure that there's still affordable wages to provide for their families.
How is unionism in the 2025 period in relationship, you mentioned, to the 1960s and 80s? What is the major difference? I'm quite interested.
Well, one of the things is admitting that we're not as good as we used to be. And that's a hard sometimes.
As a union?
Yeah, and sometimes that's hard. That's hard for us. You know, unions stand up and say, we're proud, we're union, we're strong. But the truth be told, we've lost membership in the AFL-CIO for years. We're starting to build it back, but we've had a decline. We've had a decline in membership. And if we keep thinking we're the greatest, then why are we doing downwards? So we need to change things up from even our organizing atmosphere to our conversation pieces to make sure that it's a diverse place and a welcoming place for all workers, no matter what their industries are. You look at what's going on today with the Starbucks workers. Those were things that were never thought about years ago. They were people just serving coffee, but they're workers. Look at the car wash campaigns. These are workers that want the same rights as other workers in workplaces. So we're starting to definitely see the differences and look at campaigns. You look at what's going on. There's department stores closing as Amazon's growing. Well, yeah, they're workers just in a different capacity, making sure, again, those values of dignity and respect are brought into the workplace, making sure safety is in the forefront, and making sure wages and benefits are at the top of the game.
How would you prioritize the interest of members in wanting to join a union? What do you think the members see? Because it's important for you in a leadership role to understand what the members are thinking about. So the question is, what do you believe are their priorities as they look at wanting to be a member of a union?
So I'm going to say the one thing, though, that's comparable, very strong since the 60s to where we are today is a voice. And all workers want a voice in the workplace. And they want to make sure they continue having a voice in the workplace. Now, there's things that are hurting us. There's laws, right to work states, issues that go on there. But there's also people that are demanding the rights for voices in the workplace. You know, in order to say, hey, this is not right how we're doing this. We could do it this way. And then the other side is corporate America is making more benefits than anything before, right? And are we part of that? Are we really gaining the fruits of labor of what we've done for corporate America? During the Industrial Revolution, we saw people put in the workplaces and growth economically. Today, we're doing more work than ever before, but we're still stagnant in wages. And we need to make sure we grow with those wages. Look at the billionaires are becoming trillionaires now, and we're not getting any benefits back from that atmosphere. And the workers are demanding it. Workers are saying, I want my fair share. Today, there's nurses standing on the sidewalks today in New York City to make sure that they're providing fair wages, provided good health care, and pension benefits. And those are things that workers demand. They're no different than the demand of that person in that Starbucks. Maybe they have a different workplace. Maybe they have a different cause in what they do, but they want a voice. Both people want a voice in the workplace.
Is the issue of union, of wages, is that remain the priority goal of members as they look at a union?
Not every
place. And if so,
place.
what are the other issues that you deal with?
Not every place. It's benefits. Benefits are huge. Today, wages are important at a contract table, and yeah, people are trying to afford to make sure they could send their son and daughter off to school, to making sure that they can provide, putting a meal on their table. Wages are part of it. But if the wages are eaten up with health care benefits, which is the number one thing at a contract table, we see the major increases in health benefits or the decrease in benefits with the higher cost associated to it. So we're making sure that those things are in the forefront. Affordability, things are going up. Wages are really trying to just keep up with it and maybe not keep up with it, and we continue to struggle with it. And demands there are needed, which is understandable because, you know, people want to be able to, you know, bring something home to their family, put something away for a rainy day, and then make sure they make the next generation a better generation than the generation before. We're slow at it right now, but I see there's a class of one percenters that are not having a problem like the workforces are today.
Do you, as the national president, get involved in negotiations on an individual basis with this union or that union?
Not all the time. For my own union, I may not get brought in until we really get to a point of either we're going to pull a strike or we really need to push things along in certain ways. I got great staff people that do their work, that continue doing the benefit side. I have great leadership out there and local leadership that know and feel the pulse of the membership and know what the demand needs are. Like I said, if you have a workforce that is in aging or a younger workforce, their demands and needs may be totally different, and what their wants are.
Where are your major categories of unions and also obviously memberships associated with that as you look at the United States?
So right now, we're probably in the UWA heavier in the Northeast. But we have major membership out in California. I see growth in our membership in some of the stuff that's coming on board. We see the demand on generation today for AI centers or just even manufacturing sides. Even when there was talk about putting in different kind of generation for electric vehicles and things. So we see growth in those areas. But we also see the demands and growth in other areas. So water sector is a demanding area that's continue to grow. In California, it hits differently than it may do in Georgia. So where water is a precious resource in California, those workers are a lot different than those in Georgia because the wants and needs are. But we see no more wells in homes. We see community wells. We see bigger growth in water treatment. And in wastewater treatment. And we're actually seeing growth, like a lot of other unions, in right-to-work states. Right-to-work states are starting to churn their ways, where workers are saying, I want to belong to a union so I can have a voice in the workplace. We were never in Georgia. A few years ago, we organized in Georgia with some gas companies. And we're continually looking at growth in those areas. States like Colorado are changing. We're adventurous right now. We're out organizing in Colorado. So growth is in different areas. And we're not just looking at where we're heavy right now. We're looking across the United States for any voice.
You've mentioned water treatment. That interests me. What work would your members do in a water treatment industry?
Yeah, so they could be from as simple as a treatment plant to a distribution side to making sure that the storage areas are making sure they're healthy and ready for all society and that side of it. So we're always in the treatment side. We have some major treatment facilities out there. We're going to see more and more grow of that. Like I said, it's desalinization is another process on it. So we're going to see more of that growth of it, but we're more the treatment side of it.
Now, in the New York area, which I'm very familiar with, and you were the president at one time of Local 1-2, which is the local union for utility workers. How would you compare where 1-2 is today? And again, you talk about going back to the time that you were the president, and then maybe even earlier than that. How would you evaluate Local 1-2?
Yeah, it's growing. I will tell you, we got new leadership there, young folks. They look at things a lot differently. I'm talking to them right now about AI and the adventures of AI in grievances and arbitrations. So there's a different capacity of where they are. We've shut down some facilities, like Indian Point was shut down here in New York, but they're constantly looking at different things. So it's still doing the same thing as when I was there, representing membership and making sure of it, but also looking at where is the growth area of it and venturing into a different climate of it. I'm proud of the leadership there, and I'm proud that they're doing a lot of work there. They have a different tone towards it, and they actually connect with the membership very well, and it's great to see that.
You know, I always, in my mind, utility workers, and then I related it to something called Consolidated Edison.
Yeah.
What is that status? And that has changed, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us.
Yeah, so our membership here in New York is actually our largest local. They have, I think, just under 8,000 members, and majority of their membership works for Con Edison. And we've had bad relationships from the 2012 lockout, where I was vice president, to getting a collective bargain agreement their last time around. I think they're facing one in a year from now. So relationships change, but also companies change. I will tell you that same old boss that wasn't there, was there years ago, isn't there. There's a new CEO, Tim Cawley. I sat down recently with the president of the local and him to build on a relationship. And a relationship, when I talk about it, is to have an open and honest dialogue. When things aren't going well, to tell them it's not going well. When we see mistakes, and then when they're doing things right, to tell them they're doing things right in that sense of it. It's not, well, this is the way it is, and that's the way we have to accept it. And I think the leadership here in New York does, and I think that's making, the demand need is so much on workforces today. So if storms come in, yeah, they'll hate the company, but the impact is really taken out on my membership when they're on the street. They're the face of it.
You know, you generally have the notion of unions here and employers over here. How would you describe that relationship? One would think on the surface, if you step back, hostility between two. What is the flavor of the communications between the leadership of the Con Edison, in this case, and also the union?
Yeah,
How would you describe that?
I'm going to say that it's not, and I won't even just say just Con Edison. Relationships really, no matter what it is, have to be worked on. It's just like marriage, right? Have to be worked on. Any relationship has to be worked on. Doesn't mean you agree all the time. Doesn't mean you disagree all the time. I mean, here's the fact. My membership is a priority to us, and so is a place for their workplace is. So we need a priority. But we need a place that has a balance in it. And that means that we can work very in hand on certain issues, but we can work against each other on other issues, but also have a relationship that we're going to actually talk to each other and disagree with each other and respect each other on that. If I turned around and said I disagree and I shut you out, that's meaning that I'm not even want to working with you. Mm-hmm. But if I disagree and I'm listening to your viewpoint, maybe I could listen to your viewpoint and think of how to come to a solution of that. I think that's the biggest piece, making sure you work to it. The demand needs, you see it in the political world today where everybody is saying, you know, we're going to freeze utility rates. I get that. Affordability is a huge issue across the country, and a rightfully so huge issue. But in reality, we need some investments into our grid structure to make sure we're not having outages. So we could work with the company on those things and enlighten the elected official that may be saying that to understand what they're saying and the impacts that they have to the communities that my membership serve.
How does it work now? Do you have more individuals looking to join the union and become part of this work, or are you struggling to get men? How does that work?
So it happens on a few ways. We get calls from places of a collective bunch of folks that say, I'd like to join utility workers, and we venture and look at really where they are and what they want to do, right? And are they really the majority or just a bunch of folks that are saying it? We get individuals that think we're like some other unions. We're not like building trades unions where it's hiring hall, the company hires the folks. So we direct them towards the companies that may be hiring. But we also have companies that want to say, I want a unionized workforce. That's going on today. Because they understand the unionized workforce. They understand that could be the health benefit issues to getting the projects that they would like. So we have a combination of all, and we're going to look for whatever the true side of it is. At the end of the day, what's the best for my membership? If it's the membership in a whole, or just even this collective group in it, and making sure that they're represented to the fullest.
How would you evaluate Con Edison as a partner, essentially, in this relationship?
Right now, a good partner. We agree and disagree on a lot of things, but there's been issues that we've helped them out with the legislation in the state, which I think is changes. You know, they wanted to look at the deregulation sector areas. In the 80s, deregulation came in, the unions were kept out of that conversation, and it was supposed to lower the bill, it was supposed to get a better product. I didn't see any of those things come from the airline industry to the utility industry. So now when we're talking about utilities maybe getting into renewable energy and renewable generation, we want to be in that conversation. And what's the benefit, A, for the membership and the communities that they serve? So we have a good relationship currently. Doesn't mean I agree tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
I take day by day and issue by issue. So.
What are some of the areas that your members work in? I know, for example, in powerhouses, there's a lot of work. Why don't you kind of explain what the various categories of employment areas are?
Yeah, we cover a gamut. You know, if somebody sees somebody standing on the street, they don't understand. They just see maybe the hard head of that individual. That could be somebody tagging a feeder to splicing cable. That's what I did for a living. I was a cable splicer. To somebody who may be working on a steam main in New York City or a gas main. So there's multiple sectors. In the powerhouses, we have people in the control room. We have people who are in switching and maintenance operations. We have welders. We have boiler I&C technicians. We have engineers. We have clerical folks that really keep things moving on a lot of other capacities. We have call center folks. We have walk-in center folks. So we have people. We have also changes. I mean, we don't have as many meter readers because automatic meter reading is gone, but we've had folks in a lot of capacity of it, and we're constantly looking at where's the next step in their worlds to it too.
Are all of the members that would be working for Con Edison in this case, must they all be union members?
Yes. Yeah. We represent Con Edison and all the boroughs except for Staten Island. Local 3, the IBW, it's an agreement we've had a long time passed on. But everybody who enters the workforce belongs to Local 1 too. In all capacities, and we do collective bargaining for all terms and conditions, from those in New York City to Westchester County.
In this very significant leadership role that you are involved with every day, I'm extremely interested in the things that you enjoy the most and maybe the areas that are most challenging.
You know what, John? I could tell you, if anything, probably the thing I most enjoy is my membership. You know, in 2019, I stood on a podium taking a national officer's job. And I said this to all membership, and I live by this every day. The most important things in my life is my family and my membership, and I treat them equally the same. I look at my member in any capacity as my brother John or my sister Amory or Kathleen, and I treat them the same and show that same kind of fondness in it. So I love being with them. I've always trying to be out in the field. I travel around the country. I try to meet with them, sit with them, not just to hear their issues in the workplace, but also hear what's going on in their lives, so that when I'm back talking to somebody, I'm able to express what's going on. What's the anguish? You know, where are the problems in it, and see if we can resolve it. And then what do I kind of like? It hits me the most is I love my family. My wife and my kids, but it takes time away from them.
Yeah.
And
how much time are you away in terms of traveling?
My wife will tell you, she would tell you that I'm gone a good amount, but she's also a very, very understanding lady. You know, when I took my role as an officer, when I became in New York in 2005, my role, I said, I'm going to give you, and at that time Harry Farrell was the president, and I had said to Harry, I will give you 110%. If I can't do it, I'm cheating you and myself, and the last thing I want to do is cheat myself. And my wife knows that it was more demanding than ever before, but understands it's my passion and my love. And she knows that, and she's so understanding of it. There's times that I've missed things. I just turned 60. I was away at MLK with a bunch of folks this weekend down in Baltimore. I was with my members, and I could have been with my family, but my family had understood, and they said, Dad, if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it, and they're understanding. So it's a tug and a pull, and we'll sit down and have a cake together and enjoy my birthday, but being with my membership was also enjoyment to it too.
Your office is in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
and I'm very interested in what interaction do you have with the government, or why are you in D.C.?
Majority of local or nationals are in DC, centralized, because politics have to play a part in unions. As much as folks don't want to, either they're an R or a D, but they really don't like the fact we're in a split polarization right now in politics. But we have to be there. We have to be there to make sure with the Department of Energy or the Department of Labor or even Congress what they're doing for impacts on working people, and making sure that when they're passing things that they're getting the voice of the folks that are really making things move in this country, and that's working people. Corporations will spend a lot of money on lobbyists, and the power of the unions is the power of the vote. When I can go into a legislator's room and speak about it, and speak about how many members are in that area, they're astute to really knowing that there's membership going to polls, to either making sure that when they do elect elected officials, that they're working on behalf of the American people. Right now, we really got to change. It's an R issue, or a D issue, to really a people's issue, and that's really what the conversation will be. Because if they're only listening to one side, they're only getting one side of the story, right? I saw what happened during COVID. I saw what happened during events and storms and things like that, wildfires in California. And it's fine and dandy to talk to a corporation. But when you're looking at people in the eye and you really see people where they're hurting because they can't get child care, or where they're having impacts where their home has been destroyed and they can't get insurance companies to listen to them. To even during sickness and health, they're making sure that they're getting care. Or even like during COVID, to making sure we had PPE for folks. Those are impactful issues that our elected officials need to really make sure that are taken care of. Stop taking care of the billionaires. They're gonna have the money for it, right? Take care of the people who really put them there for it. Dr. King had said, and there was a quote this weekend about, we elect people to serve the people, not us to serve them.
I would imagine that the given administration, Democrat, Republican as it may be, would have a certain perspective that would either be beneficial or not so much so as it relates to unions. So I would imagine that it varies over time. Without getting involved in the Democrat, Republican, but I am kind of interested, how do you feel you're dealing within a Washington, D.C. administrative environment as it relates to unions?
Yeah, so right now we see what's happening with the federal workers being stripped of collective bargaining rights, and that's not good. That's not good at all. But we also see, I could tell you, Joe Biden was a very pro-union president, but there was issues that I disagreed with him tremendously on. My coal factories were shutting down, my coal plants were. And I understood the desire for them to shut them down, but making sure they understood, is there a place for those workers to go? So I don't take an R and a D, I take the issue and I really look at that issue and say, is this good for America working forces out there? Listen, no matter what, from the invention of the first Model T Ford to where we are today, workers have always made economic growth in this country. Building things. We're always going to be the machine to build it, and workforces are going to be needed, right? But we really got to take care of them. I took care of tools for years, making sure that my tool was there for tomorrow. If we and I'm not saying a worker is a tool out there for everybody, but I'm going to tell you that if we don't start looking at working class people, they're not going to be around for us when we need it. So.
You made some reference to the coal industry. Yeah. And I'm very interested, what happens when an industry, for whatever reason, had a plant over here and had 20 of your members working, and for whatever reason they make a decision to close that facility? What happens to the 20 members under those circumstances?
So in the coal industry, it's a very tough one because the areas that they're in, right? West Virginia, the Virginia areas, all of the areas that coal workers from Chicago. And, I saw them working in mines to then coming into the plant. Well, if we don't think another place for them, if they're going to shut down that plant, no matter where it is, we need to make sure there's a workplace for people. People want clean environment, but they also don't want to starve. They want to provide for their families. So we have to really look at it. We've been successful in other areas. Like I said, Indian Point shut down. Either people, we have gotten packages for them to make sure that they're okay during their ready steadiness to the retirement age, making sure that they were employed while a decommissioning of the plant was going on, or getting them into other companies in that sense of it. That doesn't fit everywhere. And I think that's where sometimes we get it all wrong. You know, right now there was coal plants that weren't represented by my union, but represented by other unions that were scheduled to shut down. And the DOE said we need them on because we need the generation capacity right now, which totally understand. And that's fine. But we should be looking at when a plant is shutting down to have a resource to fulfill that plant's needs. And that is not just the needs of the community, it's also the needs of the workers. You know, when we look at an environmental issue, I always say we have to look at the workers in that plant. We need to look at that community because there's tax bases that are being taken from that community. And we also could look at the company too to make sure that well, if we miss one of those equations, we're going to miss it all. And we got to make sure that all pieces are taken care of.
How would you evaluate the union leadership and challenges to union leaderships across the country? Not just talking about your own, but is leadership in unions being challenged?
It is, and it should be challenged. It should be challenged. Like I said, the demands and needs are different. I look at my own children and what we see with college loans today. I look at the young men and women that are coming in and to a workforce and are already in debt before they even entered their first paycheck, right? From student loans to just even car issues going on. So there is challenges and needs to it. But we really need to be always on a challenging side because we want to make sure that if we're not challenged, we're not listening. So I always say, take the challenges because it really sharpens you in really what the pulse of your membership is. And all unions are constantly doing. Teachers, perfect example. What's the dynamics of AI in the classrooms today? What's it going to be in 5 years from now? Right.
You've made reference to AI several times.
Yeah.
So let me understand AI in relationship to the industry that you're dealing with.
So I reference it because it's actually one of my top items today. And I'm not saying I don't know if I agree, if it's good or bad yet. My jury is still out on that one. But we know that it's happening, just like we know cell phones came in. So I kind of look at it, how can this tool help us out in making sure that we're prepared for it when it comes? Now, that's also making sure we're prepared in the workplace. Is it going to displace workers? You see automations on phones where I have people in a call center. What's the impacts to it and making sure that they're able to adapt to it? Then the other side is that can it benefit us in collective bargaining or grievance proceedings in it too? I don't know what the answers is, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to sit on a sideline waiting for an answer. I'm going to go out and find it and educate myself and educate my members for it. And we'll figure it out when we get more towards in depth of it. I think we're only in the beginning sides of it. I would have never imagined, like I said, the Industrial Revolution moved fast. The technology revolution is moving faster than ever before. Right? I remember when we got our first VCR, to now everything is streaming, right? So we have to change with those times. And when things are coming in, don't sit and wait for it. Don't wait for it to come onto your table. Get in front of it, figure it out, learn about it, and then let's adapt to it or resist on it in a way too. It's okay to resist on it too.
We've learned a tremendous amount from you in terms of your remarkable experience, and I mean that sincerely. One final question. What should members do who want to be part of a union, and what can they do to strengthen the whole union process?
So, great question. Membership is only as strong as their voice. If they don't go to union meetings or they don't get engaged and involved, it's just an individual out there speaking, all right? But all membership needs to get engaged. Educate yourselves, figure out where you fit and how you fit in it. And that could be as simple as helping and standing by the shop steward to really engage and making sure that the voice collectively is strong and making sure you understand what the union's doing and letting the union know you too. So it's a really, the strength of all leaders is its members. And that's why I said I treat them like my own family. It's, you know, you could be the head of a family, and you are, John, and the strength of you is your family with you.
Family is at the heart of it, as you
Yeah.
say. Jim, I can't tell you thank you so much. I know how successful you are in your leadership because you are, when all the shots are fired, and I've known you a long time, you are one decent, likable, caring person.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your time.
Always a pleasure, John, and I appreciate your friendship and just being here with you, having a
Thanks.
conversation.
Thanks a million. It was delightful. Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it.